Dana. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. All right. So I'm going to present on understanding your financial aid offer letter. Like Shayna said, this can be confusing, especially if you're going through it for the first time. So I'm going to, talk about breaking down the basics, the difference between grants, scholarships, loans, and work study, understanding the total cost of attendance versus the net cost. I'm going to walk through a sample award letter so you can see exactly what our award letters look like. We'll also talk about next steps in financing and the different options that are available to cover that net cost. And finally, how to advocate for yourself. So, tips on how to ask questions or what to do if your family's financial situation has changed since you applied. And then, if I will leave time for questions at the end as well. But if you have one that comes up throughout the presentation, you can also just pop it into the chat, and Shayna will let me know. All right, so what is financial aid? Simply put, it is money to help students pay for college. And there are three main types of financial aid. The first type is gift aid. So this is grants and scholarships. So this is money that does not need to be repaid. And you want obviously to get as much of this as possible. And grants are generally need-based, based on the information that was reported on the FAFSA. And scholarships are typically merit-based, so based on grades um, or other criteria. The second type is federal work study. So, if a student demonstrates financial need, they could see a federal work study opportunity on their financial aid offer letter. And this is an opportunity to get a job on campus in one of the departments or offices and work part-time. So the jobs are not guaranteed. Students do need to apply for the jobs and secure the job. Typically, it involves an interview and getting, officially hired by the hiring manager. And then students are paid in the form of a paycheck. And they typically use this money for like personal expenses or miscellaneous expenses. So this fund does not it's not deducted from the bill, but it is money, an opportunity to earn money that you can use to pay for those miscellaneous expenses. And then finally, the third type is student loans. And so loans, of course, do need to be repaid. We offer both federal loans and we also participate in the Massachusetts no interest loan program as well. So, of course, this is, money that needs to be paid under the terms of the master promissory note, and I'll go into more detail on that later in the presentation. But those are the three main types of financial aid that you'll see, that you could see on your financial aid offer letter. All right, so this is a little bit about grants and scholarships. Framingham State has various merit scholarships that are determined at the time of admission. So our honors program scholarship is $3,000 per year, and it requires a 3.7 recalculated high school GPA. The next is the presidential scholarship, which is $1,000 a year and requires a 3.3 recalculated GPA. There's also a transfer scholarship, which is a $2,000 value. And that is obviously for transfer students. If they had a 3.0 at the school that they're transferring from, they could be considered for that scholarship. You may have also heard of the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. This is based on students' MCAS scores, and you will have an eligibility letter from the Department of Higher Education, the Mass Department of Higher Education, if you qualify for this. So if you do, you should send us a copy of that eligibility letter, and we can make sure that it's included in your financial aid award. And that is for tuition only, which here is $970 a year. There's a RAM Alumni Award if there's an alum of the institution who thinks you would be a good fit and wants to, um, you know, put you in for this award. They do so online, and that's a $1,000 value. And then there's out-of-state awards. So this is up to $7,000 if a student is living on campus. So it's $3,500 towards tuition and $3,500 towards housing. Then we also offer a whole host of federal and state grants that are based on financial need. So these would be determined by the information that was reported on the FAFSA. We participate in the federal Pell Grant program, as well as, Mass Grant, Mass Grant Plus, tuition waivers, cash grant. We have our own need-based institutional grants as well. So if you don't happen to qualify for federal or state grants, there is a chance that you could receive need-based institutional funding. So all of these things are, again, free money that does not need to be repaid. And they'll be specifically outlined on that offer letter if it is a grant or scholarship. All right, federal direct student loans. So all students who go through the financial aid process, by filing a FAFSA and meet the basic eligibility criteria, will at the very least be eligible for federal direct student loan. It's $5,500 in the first year if you're a dependent student, and then $6,500 in the second year, and $7,500 in the third and fourth years. The student is the sole borrower. So it does not require a credit check or a co-borrower. This is a loan in the student's name through the federal government. So we offer full direct loan eligibility to anyone who qualifies. Students are not required to borrow. If you do decide to borrow, you'll have to complete entrance counseling and sign a master promissory note so you understand your rights and responsibilities as a student loan borrower. If you demonstrate financial need, a portion of this loan can be subsidized. So up to $3,500 can be subsidized, meaning it does not accrue interest until the loan goes into repayment. And then there's an unsubsidized portion in which the loan begins to accrue interest as soon as it disperses onto the student account. The interest rate for 25-26 is a fixed rate at 6.39%. They will announce the 26-27 interest rate. It's usually sometime in June. And then I went over the annual limits. As far as repayment goes, no payments are due while a student is enrolled at least half time. So the payments are deferred while the student's in school. So if you're in at least 2 classes here, our registrar's office will report out to the National Student Clearinghouse, letting them know that you are in fact enrolled here, and those payments will be deferred until you drop below half-time enrollment or graduate. If you're a dependent student and you borrow the maximum amount for the 4 years, it will be $27,000 at the end of the 4 years. And then the estimated payment on that is about $300 a month for 10 years.
Caitlin, we had a question that came in.
Sure.
Are grants and scholarships are grants and scholarships decreased if a student is awarded a private scholarship?
So we do need to be notified. That's a great question. We do need to be notified of, any outside financial aid. And there are some times when we need to reduce financial aid after, finding out about this, but we try to make any adjustment possible to not have to reduce our grant funding. So we would first, of course, reduce the student loan if possible. But if, we had to, there are certain instances where we do need to reduce grants. But again, it's relatively rare, and we try to make as many adjustments to like the student's budget or the loans or potentially work study first before the last resort of adjusting other grant funding.
Thank you.
All right, so cost of attendance. Also known as the COA. So this is the total expenses for 1 year of college before financial aid is applied. And so this consists of direct costs, which are billed by the institution, as well as indirect costs, which are not billed by the school, but they are still expenses that are factored in to the cost of attendance. Our tuition and fees for 26-27 are expected to be $12,590. If you're an in-state student getting the Massachusetts tuition and fee rate. And then our food and housing, so the residence hall and the meal plan through the college is approximately $16,240. And again, this is an average. So if you choose like a less expensive room, for example, like a standard double room and potentially a value meal plan, you could save like over $1,000 by choosing the, less expensive option. So that is an average, and it will be less if you choose a more basic option. It could be more if you're choosing like a premium single and our most expensive meal plan. So these are what you'll see reflected on your bill that you get from Framingham State. There's also indirect costs. So these are costs associated with being a student, but we're not sending you a bill for these. And these can fluctuate student to student depending on their individual circumstance. But this is what we use as an estimate. So books and supplies, we estimate $1,200 a year. $1,000 for a laptop that will meet the technology needs. Personal expenses of 1,600. So these are things like your toiletries, going out to eat, things like that. Just your personal day-to-day, expenses that you accrue, along the way. And then we estimate $770 for transportation. And of course, this one could vary significantly depending on if you live, in Natick versus if you live in Arizona. But that is just an estimate. So the total cost of attendance for a student living on campus at the in-state rate is $33,400. And again, this is before any financial aid is applied. That is the total cost for 1 year. of college, including both direct and indirect expenses. Then out-of-state students are charged a higher tuition rate, so their tuition and fees are 18,670. And then we also participate in the New England Board of Higher Education tuition break program. So if you are out of state and if you are out of state in one of the New England states and you choose a program that um, is your home state does not offer at one of their public institutions, then you can receive that NEBI rate, which is slightly less than the out-of-state tuition. All right, so your net cost is your total cost of attendance minus financial aid. So simply put, that is how you get your net cost. So I'm going to go over our sample financial aid offer letter. Some of you may have already received your offer letter. All student, it looks different for all students depending on your unique situation. So we really tried to strive to be as transparent as possible in our offer letters to make things, as clear as they can be for the student and family. So we list the source and the amounts. So this example includes a presidential merit scholarship of $1,000, a federal Pell Grant of $2,940, a Mass Grant, which is a state need-based grant of $1,400, a FSU housing grant of 6,500, Mass Grant Plus of the 9,250. So all of these funds are grants or scholarships. So these funds here do not need to be repaid. This is gift aid. The student also has the $3,500 subsidized loan and the $2,000 unsubsidized loan that I talked about earlier. And then they do also have a federal work study opportunity as well of $2,000. But again, that does not come off of the bill. And now down here we have the definitions of each type of financial aid. And then we also include a breakdown of how much FSU will cost you for 1 year. So this is the net direct cost. So, and we separate if you accept the scholarships and grants only and you don't accept your student loans, it will be $7,740 to attend Framingham State for 1 year. That's your direct build cost. And again, that's an estimate using the average room and board as well. And then if you choose to borrow the student loans offered, that will bring the cost down to $2,240 for the year. Okay, and then we also include the enrollment that the award is based on, as well as the student's housing choice. Okay, so if the student later on decides they want to commute from home instead, we would then revise the award letter based on their new housing choice. But this is a full-time on-campus student. This is the cost if they take their loans. That's the cost if they don't. So we try to make this as transparent as possible.
Caitlin, there was a question in the chat about work study.
Okay.
So if their award letter does not indicate that they were offered work study, do they have an opportunity to apply for a work study job or other job opportunities on campus? And is there a list that students can actually um, utilize to find these jobs?
Hey, great question. So, work studying, you do need to demonstrate financial need to qualify for work study. So, if it's not included in as part of your package, you can ask us to if we could add it to your award. Um, but if you don't qualify for work study, there are some limited on-campus student employment opportunities that don't require federal work study. They're paid out of the departmental budgets. So there is student employment outside of work study as well. And there is a kind of database where we post our student employment jobs. It's called Handshake, and any department who's looking to hire a student can post the job there as well as the job description, and the students would apply directly in the Handshake system for the jobs. So, great question. All right.
Uh,
And this is,
one more
ooh,
question. I'm actually not sure if you're going over this or not. If you don't take the loan, is there a payment plan you can set up with the school?
yes, there is.
Okay,
And I do have a slide on that a little
great.
bit later in the presentation, but we do have an interest-free payment plan that allows families to spread the payments out over a 10-month period. And I will go into a little bit more detail on that. So this is the back of our award letter. So we do outline the cost of attendance, which I went over earlier, the direct costs and the indirect costs. And then just, some important information, disclosure type information as well. And then the next steps, if the student does want to borrow the federal direct loan, these are the requirements that they have to complete. So this is basically the front and back of our award letter. We load these to the student portal as well, and we send a hard copy home with a booklet that contains even more detail about all of our financial aid programs. So, does anyone have any questions about the offer letter?
Yes, I actually do.
Sure.
So two questions actually. So was the work study amount deducted from the net cost on that letter, on that
No.
offer letter?
No, so work study, because the jobs are not guaranteed and students do need to apply for them and go through a hiring process, and there are a limited number of jobs, but they're definitely out there. And if a student is proactive about it, they can obtain student employment. But this is money that's earned in the form of a biweekly paycheck. So this is not deducted from the bill.
Okay, so
Uh,
the 7,740, that does not include the federal work study amount, correct?
That's correct. That's
Okay,
just the scholarships and grants.
got you. Now, what does it mean if someone has a negative amount on their net cost?
That is an excellent question. So if it's a negative amount, that means it's a credit balance. And so that's basically would be refunded to the student. Um, First, it's offered as a book voucher. So if you have a credit balance, it's first offered to the student as a book voucher for up to $700 to spend on their textbooks through our campus bookstore. Anything that is not spent in the bookstore does get later on in the semester refunded to the student. So if it's a negative number and it's coming from the loans, and the student is entitled to that funding, but if it is coming from loans, then and you don't need the loans to pay for like your various indirect costs, then we do recommend, reducing or declining the loan because that is money that needs to be repaid. But the credit balance is not always coming from a loan, or sometimes a portion of it is from the loan and a portion is from the grant. But basically, if there's a negative number if there's a negative number here, it's a credit balance.
Okay. So now let's say, for example, there's like minus $1,000 in the net cost, right? And,
Yep.
and this student has like almost the same breakdown here, has the federal work study. That does mean if they don't do the work study, it's zero, or does it mean it's
The
not?
works the work study is not factored into these two numbers.
Gotcha. Okay. And it means that the student does not need to pay the university. There's no like cost that needs to come from the student.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So after get your financial aid offer letters from, your different institutions, you'll want to kind of review all of them like we just did and really figure out what each school's net price is. Because it's really the net price that you want to get at to make your decision. Because some schools, for example, could offer huge scholarships or huge grants, but their tuition and fees could also be very, very high. So even though they're offering you a $40,000 scholarship, if the school costs, $60,000 per year to attend, you still have to come up with $20,000. So just because the financial aid package is more, it doesn't always mean that your net cost is going to be less. So you do really need to review each offer letter in detail and really figure out that net price for each school. And then it's, really time to be having these family conversations about affordability. You want to sit down together as a family to figure out the net price and then who will pay for these college costs. Just, that's definitely a discussion, an honest discussion that you want to have. If you do have a balance after financial aid is applied, who is going to be responsible for that? Is the parent going to do a payment plan? Is the parent willing to borrow a loan? Do you want the student to borrow a private loan in which then they will need a parent to be a co-signer? So you want to start having these conversations like around your table now, just so everyone is clear on who's going to be responsible for the balance. And it varies from family to family. And a lot of times it ends up being a combination of, parents and the student. But these are things that you want to start talking about now, especially as these, offer letters are coming out. And then you also need to consider like the bigger picture. So the number of children in the family going to college. So if this student, if they're have two siblings after them, is the parent going to be, willing to borrow a plus loan for all three students? So you definitely want to consider the number of children in the family going to college, and you also want to make a 4-year financing plan because you don't just want to think about getting through that first year and figuring out the rest later. You do want to think big picture, long term for that full 4 years. Also think in terms of family total debt, and the student's potential starting salary. So if, the student is going to college to be a teacher and the salaries are a little bit modest and you are going to have to get a master's degree after your bachelor's degree, you may not want to borrow $40,000 a year in a private alternative loan. You might want to consider going to the school with a lower net price, so that you can afford the 4 years and then knowing that the masters will follow. So you really want to start having these conversations now and thinking big picture, about how you are going to go about covering that gap, that net cost. And then once you do determine the net cost, there are different options available for managing the balance. So, as someone asked earlier, there's the interest-free monthly payment plan. So this is very, very popular, because it allows the families to pay in installments. So it spreads the payments out over 10 months. It is a $40 fee to participate, but then, you just break the payments out over those 10 months, and pay in installments. And every school has a variation of this option. There's also the Federal Plus loan. So this is a loan in the parent's name. If they are willing to borrow, to finance their child's education. If the family feels that the parent borrowing is the best option for them. And starting in July of 2026, the maximum plus loan a parent can borrow is $20,000 a year and $65,000 total. So you just want to keep this in mind because if you do have to borrow $20,000 a year, that's not even going to get you through the full 4 years. This was a change, a very recent change, starting in July as part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And then finally, there's private alternative education loans. So often the student is the borrower. You would need to, do your research on the different lenders. There's, different credit unions, banks, MIFA, the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, is an excellent option. So if you do still have, a gap after the financial aid is applied, that you can't afford to put all of it on that monthly payment plan, many of our families do utilize these options, the plus loan and the private alternative loan. And if the student does pursue that private alternative loan as the primary borrower, they will need a creditworthy co-borrower. Another thing to note is if a parent is denied a plus loan, the student will be eligible for an additional $4,000 in the unsubsidized direct loan in their name. So we do have a number of families that are in that scenario as well. All right, special circumstances and appeals. Yes.
Hold on for 1 minute. Mark, I think I saw your hand raised if you want to ask a question. And I know we have a couple of questions in the chat.
When is the fall semester payment due?
Great question. So we do bill per semester. The fall bills go out in early July and they are due in early August.
Okay, my second half of the question is if, let's say, you receive a scholarship from a local business or what have you, and it comes in after you paid the fall semester, would that excess money be applied to the spring semester?
No, that would be, it would either lower the payment plan or it would be later on like refunded.
So if I paid the full amount when I got my July bill, and
Mhm.
then a scholarship trickled in afterwards, it wouldn't apply to spring?
It would not apply for spring because the spring charges wouldn't be on the account yet. So the spring charges go on the account at the end of November. So like if that check came in October, there are no, future charges to apply it to. So, and financial aid is semester specific. So that would be then, refunded or payment plan adjusted is
Okay,
typically.
so it would be, so let's say I'm sorry to belay this. So let's say I pay the full fall semester for my son, and he gets $1,000 from his employer, but that doesn't trickle until October. You guys are going to cut me a check back for $1,000?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Anything else in the
Great.
chat?
Yes, we had a couple of other questions. So,
Okay.
is the first year financial aid package a good indicator of what to expect for the upcoming year?
Great question. And as long as the family's financial situation is about the same from year to year, you can expect the financial aid offer to also be the same each year. So you do need to reapply, um, for each academic year. And the FAFSA opens in October. So you do need to reapply, but as long as your financial circumstance is similar year to year, you will get the same amount of financial aid renewed from year to year.
Great. I think this is a good question for everyone as well. So, on the financial aid award letter, if it says the net cost is $8,000, is that just for 1 year at FSU?
Yes, that is the cost for 1 year. So the financial aid offer is for 1 year of school, both fall and spring semesters. And that is, yes, the cost for one academic year. And so if it's $8,000, it would be roughly 4,000 in the fall and 4,000 in the spring.
And I think you already answered this, Caitlin, but just to make sure. So, in the case of a local business scholarship award received after payment is made, can that be used for incidentals such as travel supplies, books, etc.?
Yes. Yeah, if the bill is fully paid, also depends on how the check is written out. A lot of times, sometimes it goes directly to the student, in which we would still need to know about it and have, a copy of the documentation. But if the bill was fully paid, and that scholarship comes in later and it's applied to the student account, that credit balance would then be refunded, in which the student can use it to pay for their miscellaneous and personal expenses or transportation, things like that. Anything else? Okay, so special.
Actually, another question came in. I don't know the actual cost. Caitlin, do you know how much one summer course is during one class
Um,
in the summer?
it's just under
Oh,
$1,400.
okay. Thank
Um,
you.
I think like 1360, somewhere around there.
I think you're right. I'm not 100% sure though. Thank you.
For one class. For some reason, like 1355 is but so it's a little less than $1,400 for one summer course. Okay, so special circumstances and appeal. So if you have circumstances that were not reflected on the FAFSA, contact us to discuss your options. So the FAFSA uses prior calendar year tax data. So we're in 2026, and the information on the 26-27 FAFSA is using 2024 income. So if your family has experienced loss of employment or income since then, let us know. If they had a one-time income that won't be repeated, that's another thing we may be able to consider. If they had to take a distribution from their 401k of $40,000 to pay for a leaking roof on their house, they spent that money, they don't have it as a liquid asset available to pay for college. Um, they don't normally have that income from year to year. We could potentially consider something like that. If a family has unusual medical expenses not covered by insurance, so these are payments that were made out of pocket towards medical expenses, or if there was a recent change in parent marital status or household size. So any of these factors could increase a student's financial aid eligibility. So definitely reach out if you do have a special circumstance. And documentation is key. If we were to make an adjustment for any of these reasons, we would need to collect documentation such as copies of the federal tax return, unemployment receipts, copies of a parents' like most recent pay stub, things like that. So if you do have a circumstance, again, you want to sort of maintain any of the documentation you have to support the appeal. And if you're not sure what that would be, definitely just reach out to us. Send us an email outlining your circumstance, and the financial aid counselor will let you know exactly what to submit to support your appeal. All right, any questions? This is our contact information for the financial aid office if you don't want to ask a question in front of the group. But yes, any questions?
Another question just came in about health insurance. Is that included in the total cost?
So we are required to ensure that all of our students have health insurance. And so we do charge students for health insurance. And if they have their own and don't want to enroll in the school's health insurance, they can complete a waiver in which they, enter the information of the health insurance that they have, and then we would waive that charge. So that most students have their own health insurance. So that was not included in the figures in my slide deck because most of our students do end up waiving that charge because they have their own insurance. Mass Health does qualify as a plan that can waive that charge. And the waiver is on My Framingham, which is like the student portal after a student deposits, commits to coming here. And so that it becomes available, the waiver, usually in July around when the bills go out. So because there's really nothing to waive until that bill is there and the charge is on there. So it's an electronic waiver available on the student portal once the bills come out in July.
So another great question here. Does the number of children in the family enrolled in college have an impact on financial aid?
So the question is asked on the FAFSA, but as part of the FAFSA Simplification Act starting in 2024-25, the number of children in college is no longer a factor in the formula. So the number of family members in the household is, but even though they ask the question, the number of children in college is not considered when determining financial aid.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Other questions? Great
These are
questions.
fabulous questions.
I love an interactive audience.
I do want to let everyone know, because I know, conversations are probably being had at this point and financial aid packages are, being looked at. We will have another session in March 10th, about comparing, various financial aid packages. So, if you do want to tune in March, definitely that registration will be opening up by the end of this week. And I just want to let everyone know, Caitlin kind of alluded to the enrollment checklist. Once a student deposits to Framingham, so once that decision has been made, know that on their application portal, we will have an enrollment checklist that really lays out everything that the student needs to do. We have great YouTube videos, just about the process. I know sometimes it's, sometimes reading all the information could be a little daunting, and just actually hearing and watching someone go through the steps is a little bit easier. So we do have YouTube videos, but like I said, we do have this enrollment checklist that really does lay out everything that the student needs. It also includes their admissions counselor. So again, I have a phenomenal staff that is ready to work with the students. So if they do have any questions, have them log into their portal and reach out to their admissions counselor directly. A comment just came in just about the data already committed last month. I am so excited to hear that. We will be launching that enrollment checklist probably in another 3 weeks or so. There's a lot of back end stuff that needs to get ready before we can actually launch that. But very excited to hear that. We also too are sending out our accepted student reception invitations. So those are dropping this week. So look for that. And you can go ahead and RSVP, and hopefully we will see you on campus later in March or in April. I'm looking at the chat. The honors program, the students do not need to apply to the honors program. If they were accepted into our honors program, that would have been noted on their acceptance letter. If they do have any questions about the honors program, why they may have not been selected, definitely have them reach out to their admissions counselor. Again, just have them log into their portal, and the contact information is right there. Students do have the opportunity, if they were not awarded the honors program coming in as a first-year student, students do have the opportunity to apply to that program their sophomore year. So there is another opportunity, like I said, their sophomore year, to apply to that program.
And there was another question, how many semesters are there at Framingham? So the standard is, fall and spring. And if you attend fall and spring full time, you can graduate in 4 years. But we do have winter session coursework. So it's a shorter, accelerated term in between when fall ends and when spring starts. It's not a requirement. Some students choose to take classes during that winter session. And then we also have summer classes as well. And again, that's not a requirement, but some students do choose to take summer courses for various reasons. If they had to withdraw from a class, and they want to make it up, or if, again, it's not required, but we do have fall and spring as our main, standard semesters, but we do offer the winter session and summer as well.
Excellent. Well, I don't see any other questions.
Is there 1 or 2 semesters in the summer?
There are multiple semesters in the summer. There's various start dates during the summer. Some of the, yes. There's
And
more
so,
than, yeah, I know they're trying to consolidate a bit, but there's, I think they're getting it down to three different start dates. So yeah, there's multiple sessions.
question was, how long is each semester? So our semesters usually run from the beginning of September through usually the second week of December. And then students are actually off. And then the second semester does not start up. It actually just started, what was it, the 21st of January, I believe, was when classes resumed again. And those will run until about the first part of May. So that is typically our
15 weeks.
each semester.
Yep.
So if you are curious about certain dates, if you actually go onto our website and search academic calendars, you will actually see the calendar for next year, sort of when classes start, when they end, when finals start, all that information is there. Wendy, I think you have your hand up if you want to ask.
Yes, so you mentioned that if a student they do fall and spring, they should successfully graduate in 4 years. What is the expectation as far as how many credits per semester would make a student just do fall and spring, not doing winter or summer or anything like that? How many credits would you recommend that they take each semester to be successful in completing in the 4 years? And how much is the overall credits to graduate in a year?
Do you want me to take this one?
Sure.
So if to graduate on time, generally speaking, it would be 4 classes a semester for the 4 years. And then it would be 30 kind of course credits is the requirement, minimum requirement to graduate. And our courses are a little bit different because each class is worth 4 credit hours. So you can be considered full-time if you take 3 classes a semester because full-time is 12 credit hours, and because our courses are 4 each, 3 is considered full-time. But if you did want to kind of graduate on time, you would want to take 4 classes a semester.
Caitlin, can you
Thank
talk?
you.
Oh.
You're welcome.
Caitlin, can you talk a little bit? This was a direct message to me, but I think the entire group may benefit from this. If a student was to study abroad, does their financial aid apply to that?
Yes. It does. So we have one person in my office who handles financial aid for study abroad, and she meets individually with each student. Each program is different, and they do the billing a little bit different for each program. But you can apply your financial aid to study abroad. Great question.
Excellent. Well, we're going to conclude this program. Again, thank you so much for attending. And as I mentioned, we did record this, so we will have a recording of this if you need to refer back or want to send it out to any friends at all. And again, if you have any questions, know that we are here. We are excited. We know this is sort of a roller coaster time right now, but please make sure you're having fun and come back to campus during Accepted Students Day. And again, reach out if you have any questions along this way. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.